So, hey everyone, happy Friday. Thanks for being here. We're going to give it a couple more minutes before we launch the intro, but I wanted to hear about eggs. I was starting to hear some very compelling egg story. So let's hear about that.
Yeah, Joel is on the hunt for eggs, all kinds of eggs, human or otherwise.
Oof.
But yes, so I go to buy some eggs. I'm trying to pay in Bitcoin, of course, and just to alleviate some of the pains, like, look, I'll pay you, part fiat, part Bitcoin, just so you're not feeling like you're getting gypped.
Mm-hmm.
Says okay. She goes, what's the next thing I need to do? Like, well, first thing you do is get a wallet. Once you get a wallet, secure your seed. Then once you got your seed down, I'll send you the amount, like in Bitcoin, and then I'll also give you the cash so you have both. Again, make you feel comfortable. She opens up takes her phone out, scrolls through, and there's like a page where I see almost every banking app and every payment app that's on there. And she says,
Mm-hmm.
"So what do I have to do again? Like just download an app. We'll go with a really simple wallet." And she looks at me. She's like, "Oh, this is just so much work." But then I see, okay, you have PayPal, Venmo, Zelle, and all these other things. First, you have to go to the bank, sign up, get an account, and all that. Then, when you go to PayPal or Zoom or whatever, uh, Venmo, you have to also KYC yourself, connect to your bank account. They'll drop a penny or two into your account. You take it back, you verify all that. The whole thing could take almost a couple of days to a week, depending upon how busy it is.
Mm-hmm.
All you had to do is just download a wallet, and that was already tough. So grumbling the whole way to getting a wallet. Next thing is, okay, let's get you your seed phrase. Like, what the hell is a seed phrase? Like, well, this is your private key that lets you sign transactions, and then
Mm-hmm.
already the eyes rolling. And you're like, I don't want to do this now. Like, wow, okay, I don't know how to help you. So at that point, the whole thing just went bust. We stopped at that angle,
Wow.
and yeah.
Yeah.
So even that was a hard one. It was a very
Yeah.
hard one.
People don't always want to go that route. Like I get that things are a little bit different, but people will KYC for a new app if they think it's real. This is just someone who didn't believe in it. I had that happen one time.
Mm-hmm.
It was 2018 or so, I think. I went to the was it the Texas Bitcoin conference in Austin, and
Mm.
I'm getting this Uber driver, and he was some young guy, right? And I tried to say like, look, I'll give you. I was trying to talk him up about this stuff. He's like, oh yeah, man, I heard about this stuff. Man, you're going to a conference, man. It's great, man. All this stuff. I'm like, here, I'll tip you. Like, yeah, I don't know, man. I kind of just like the cash, and then like, I said, yeah, well, I'll give you the regular tip, but this is an extra. Like, I'm gonna give you extra money, like literally free money. And
Yeah,
like, he just like wouldn't download an app or whatever. It's like, I don't know, man. I just like just one someday I'll look into it, just not right now. I'm like, but I literally like I'm giving you free money, like $10 maybe
yeah,
$20. I don't know. And he's like, no, man. And then like, all right. And
yeah.
there's a
I
reason why
can't
they
help you at
say,
that point.
I believe the philosophers say NGMI. Okay.
Yes, the Stoic philosophers, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or-
They're
It's
NGMI.
yeah. So it's the more, especially with trying to onboard, businesses and
Mm-hmm.
individuals. I've been putting on workshops too, and there's always some friction that I end up with later on that I take back. Like, well, okay, how much simpler does this need to get?
Mm-hmm.
Download a wallet, secure your keys, and then you can start sending and receiving. I mean, really, it boils down to just two steps if you want to get that technical. And even that's just really hard to do,
Yeah.
at least for the normie. And I'm kind of blown away by the difficulty of that. It's like, okay, they'll go with the brand name, right? They'll go download the PayPal, the Venmo, the Zelle. They'll download their Bank of America app. They'll go through the entire process, which is way more lengthy. But getting a Bitcoin or crypto wallet, I don't know where we go from there. It's really that simple.
Mm-hmm.
Um, not to throw my brother under the bus on this one,
Oh no,
but I
here we
mean,
go.
he's a computer engineer. He's a
Okay,
very
screw him
smart,
already.
intelligent guy.
He's a computer engineer. No excuses.
Okay, exactly. So I knew if I was going to hit him with the whole, "Hey, happy birthday, here's some Bitcoin," it
Hmm.
wasn't going to fly because he's been skeptical of the whole thing. Like, we're not even going to try that. So decided to send him a prepaid Mastercard from BitRefill. Like, here you go. This is pretty simple. It's fiat. He texts me back and says, "All right, well, what do I do with this
You use it, you
now?"
dumb
Bro,
shit.
exactly. You spend it. That's what you're
Wow.
supposed to do. He's like, "Okay, well, how do I do this?" And then we go to the whole onboarding process for getting his prepaid card onto his
Hmm.
Google Wallet. There's like 12 steps. And he's like, "Yeah, it's not working." Like, you're an engineer and you can't follow directions. Like,
Yeah.
good God, this is, again, 12 steps just to get a freaking gift card, and then 2 steps to get yourself onboarded to crypto.
Hmm.
Maybe it's the fact that it's just too simple, and people are like, "No, that's too good to be true. That can't happen." I don't know.
Yeah, it just
I'm blown away.
I think it's just way too hard for like a super casual, like let me open a browser tab type thing. And it's too hard for that, but it's also too easy to trust, you know? It's too easy to where they're like, well, if it's this easy, it must be some dumb scammy thing. Like it's just me.
Yeah,
Um,
it's too good to be true. No, it doesn't work. I don't know.
but like if you think
Yeah, I
about
know
it,
you want to give me free money, man, but no, no thanks.
I think that people need to get into it on of their own volition, or they need to get into it of their own volition, or they need to see that this is like, oh, this is necessary. Like, if
Hmm.
people will, like a couponing app, right? And some people love couponing. I mean,
Yeah,
I love sales, I love discounts, but like, I'm not gonna just do all this. I'm not gonna like, go to CVS and like get like a pallet of free toothpaste because like I'm not. I don't care. But if they care, they will
right.
get into it. They will get into the stuff. But then the other step is everyone will figure out how to file a tax return because they don't want to go to jail. That's the other end of things. No matter how, I mean, there's nothing more complicated than that. But like,
Yeah,
they'll do that because they need to. And so that's the thing is, right now, I feel like I'm willing to show the way to the investors, the people who are willing to invest in their future freedom by getting involved today. And
yep.
then they get to benefit if they want to. Just have the door open. Just if someone says, "Hey, I always wanted to know," then here you go. For everyone else, I'm not going to badger them. I'm just going to wait until they're like crawling on their knees about, "Please, Mr. Crypto Man, show me the way." And it's like, wow, it's going to cost you extra. But still, you know.
Yeah. That's the way society learns as a whole, though, right? It's pain and
Hmm.
suffering are the greatest teachers. Kind
Hmm.
of hate that, but yeah, unless something really fucked up happens, then no one will ever take the incentive to do it otherwise.
Hmm.
And okay, what? You need to have your credit card stolen. You have to have your bank account frozen. Um, you have to. You get suppressed from being able to send money across to family overseas. I mean, at what point does it happen? Or banking collapses and the currency completely crumbles, and then you're looking for a way out. Man, that would suck. That would really
Yeah.
suck. But yeah, like you said, at least hey, we're here. We're just the lighthouse guy just
Hmm.
sitting at the fringe.
Absolutely. Well, let's officially run the intro and get into this
Yeah.
because people who don't learn is kind of our first story there. So let's go. So, hey everyone,
This is
officially happy Friday. This is the Digital Cash Rundown number 110. 110 weeks in a row I've been doing this stuff, this exact show. And I'm joined by the one and only Esteban Valdez, also known as a few different things, but we'll just go with this. Also known as one of the few people who actually uses crypto in the fullest sense of the term. So, how are you doing, man?
I'm great, buddy. Really happy to be back.
Yeah, well, I'm very happy
So,
to have you as well.
yeah, it's a fun time. Every time we come on, there's always something to rant about.
Yes. Well, uh, reminder to use the super chat if you get one of my NFTs and stuff. We did get a comment from Hilawi in there about our cookie ways scare people. Yes, they do. That's the biggest thing, and to sort of put that previous subject we're talking about, like wrap it up, is when trying to do new things in like try to onboard new people to crypto and all that, and it's different. No one lives like that, so they're scared of it. And I kind of found that people who just it's past their circle of complexity or whatever, if they just see or exposed to it from someone that they know over like years, like, oh yeah, that guy's still doing that crypto stuff, and you still see him like doing this weird way of paying for stuff. Like one day they're gonna ask like, how do I do that? And it's just like when you come at them the first time, like, would you like to? It's like, it's too much, and then you just say, screw that guy, never try again. But if it's just there in front of them all the time, it's like normal, and then
there's
it's not scary.
no need to be a Jehovah Witness about this stuff.
Yes, but
Pounding on doors.
we also do need to keep calling out the nonsense in the space, because otherwise that'll be kind of attached to it, which brings us to FTX. FTX has recovered $7.3 billion in assets. Will consider rebooting the exchange. Sam Bankman-Fried's failed cryptocurrency exchange filed for bankruptcy in November of 2022 and has since been mired in court proceedings. So what's your instant take on this thing?
My tinfoil hat gets put back on.
Yeah, I mean, how could you not?
Yeah, it's the first time it happened. I mean, this guy just skyrockets into the public sphere. Nobody ever heard of this dude. And the next thing you know, he collapses. It takes many, many individuals with him. And I can't help but think, all right, well, this is one of those state-sponsored attacks. Oh, conspiracy theory, this and that. Then you look down the rabbit hole a little bit. You see the spider web of connections, the lobbying, the political donations, the endorsements, etc. And you can't help but think, maybe this is a little legitimate, that somebody was trying to do something harmful. And also the way I remember listening to the Bankless podcast with Eric Voorhees and SBF, and just watching him get completely obliterated. I'm like, how is this guy running an exchange? Absolutely ridiculous. People trust him with their money. And after the entire collapse, the whole thing hit, you look at the landscape again, okay, almost all the upstanding exchanges, Kraken, Paxful, Coinbase, that have been compliant, that have been bending over backwards, are the ones getting reamed all the time. Here's one doing things offshore, super shady, sort of gets a slap on the wrist for the most part. And ta-da, we're back again. Let's go for round two. I don't know. I feel like we've been in the they fight you stage for quite some time, and this feels like the rematch.
I feel like it's the beginning of the they fight you stage. I don't feel like they've done a lot of fighting up until now, but now this feels very like so for example, just got to highlight my own tweet on the subject where I post the Tiger King, guess what, motherfucker? Like,
oh yeah.
when you think that they're gone.
Dude,
just
I spat my coffee up when I saw that.
It's like
that was perfect.
But what I don't get, it's becoming extremely transparent at this point. Like, it's not, oh well, clearly some shenanigans. It's like I don't really have the right words for it. Let's be honest about that. It's like this is the biggest scam in crypto history, like, basically, because the more you learn about SBF and all that, the more he was just a thief and a liar. Like, that's literally all he did, is he just stole everyone's money and gambled it away and stuff while trying to power broker everyone in the world. And you're thinking like, okay, well, finally he got his comeuppance, and he seems to have, right? It seems to be they tried to pin that on all of crypto, and they're trying to be opportunistic and all that kind of stuff, they sort of use that to shake up a whole bunch of like more established things like Coinbase and stuff. And then all the like Silvergate and what was the other bank? Obviously Silicon Valley, but then I always get all those confused. But they kind of use it to go after all that stuff. And then they're like, well, what if we had FTX back again? So, and to be fair, this is just like headline stuff. And I'll wait until FTX comes back and actually see how they came back and before I can pass complete judgment. But it does seem a little like, it's like, why would anyone, it's like if Bernie Madoff comes back. It's just like, okay, well, maybe not the guy himself, but like his exact same company comes out. And it's just like, well, yeah, let's give that a try again. No, literally any other company, anything else. Like, I don't know, just make something up. Maybe like the goofyclownexchange.com. Like, just try. I don't care. Just why FTX? Just no.
Because they think people are dumb enough to go back to it.
I think they are.
And they're probably right. Human greed has no limits.
Yeah.
And the thing is that what this was, like, FTX was, it wasn't so, everyone's like, oh, this is the crypto thing, et cetera, all the other crypto coins, scam coins, etc. Whatever. Really, what it boils down to is a fiat problem.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's a fiat mindset. Because what FTX was doing was nothing different than what a fiat bank does and what a fiat stock exchange does. It's the same story. Is it the crypto token? Is it the crypto project? Is it the cryptocurrency itself? No. Right? The hammer isn't the one that's corrupting society. It's not the wheel that is bad and evil. It's the person who's behind it. And there's a lot of individuals at Alameda and FTX that were pretty questionable in character, and the people that they satisfied as well. So, I mean, I can't look at a thing and say that is bad. It's neither nor. Mm-hmm. So I think they're trying to go for another play, sucker more people in, or who knows? Maybe the money laundering is drying up and they need a fresh load to cleanse.
Yeah, but the thing is, part of the appeal of FTX is it was just huge and like no one knew what was going on. And now that you know what was going on, first of all, you don't have that same trust. Now it's like its reputation is permanently marred. Its branding is permanently bit connected, as it were. But at the same time, that's also, it was useful when you were ignorant of how shady it was, I guess. And it was also useful because it was shady. But those two things are gone, right? Everyone knows that now it's the shadiest thing in the world. Literal people have like killed themselves over losing everything in FTX. It's horrible. But then also if you're like a crook, it's like, the amount of scrutiny you got if you're using FTX now, like they got so much scrutiny, you can't launder anything. So, well, maybe you can. I guess we'll see how dumb people are. But it just doesn't seem like you need to. I think if you're going to. I don't really have words for this. This is kind of the conclusion. I have some thoughts and takes, but they're drying up fast because this is a little baffling, to be honest.
Well, it's just dumb. Mm-hmm. I mean, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice.
Mm-hmm. Pay the price.
There are going to be people. There will be people who do this again, because at the end of the day, what people are looking for is an edge out of this complete devaluation of their currency. And people are looking for an angle to get ahead, and maybe this is just like the most innocent version I can think of. Because there's the sharks and the whales and what they want, but people want to do better in life, and they feel that, hey, maybe speculating and trying to find that 100x leverage is going to help them. And it sucks because this stuff is very predatory, and people are willing to try it again. I mean, how many times does somebody go to to like 7-Eleven, buy some scratch tickets, doesn't win, and be like, well, maybe next time. It's kind of the same story,
Yeah.
or at least in my humble opinion.
Yeah, and that unfortunately ended up being the way most people interact with crypto is through centralized exchanges, but also as a purely speculative thing about like I'm going to gamble to make some money. But
Yeah.
I mean, I maybe some people. This is like a weird little theory, right? Maybe first off,
Mm.
I don't know how they recovered all those assets supposedly. Like, okay, like did they just literally finally go into SBF sock drawer and just like find all like the Trezor in there, and they're like, oh, guess what? Here it all is. Like, here's all the money that went missing. Like, is that what they did? But maybe in a weird way, it's almost like they trust it more now because they already got busted. It's just like they secretly think
The guard let down, right?
yeah, it's like all crypto is a kind of a scam, kind of, or all crypto exchanges are kind of scammy. It's just a lot of like not knowing. And now that this thing imploded, we know exactly what happened. And so now it's like, well, now I like to, now that they screwed up and we know how bad it could get, and we have a lot more clarity on it moving forward. So I trust this more than like a Binance, which is like, it could blow up any moment now. You just have no idea, but at least you know how this blew up. Which I think is ridiculous thinking, but I think you
Yeah.
know some people have.
I was like, oh no, baby, don't worry about it. I know I might have cheated, but I'm good. Everything's getting fixed. I'm
Yeah,
fine. Take me back.
yeah, that was the exact corollary I just thought of as well. Is like, well, this guy's like a piece of crap, but like I know it was just his like coworker, and he was drunk, and you know, it's like, all right, well, there at least if this is only as bad as it can get, now I know what I'm dealing with. Before it was like unknown.
Yeah.
He could be doing anything. He could be, you know, running people over in the streets or something on, you know, doing old Patrick Bateman, whatever. But like, no. So that might be the approach that they're taking. Either way, I just think
Probably.
it's completely ridiculous that you would trust it. Like,
And there will be people. I think I'm with you though.
mm-hmm,
Probably got to sit on the sidelines a little bit. All right, they
mm-hmm,
have another grandiose launch, and how many people take to it. Eventually, everything comes out into light.
mm-hmm.
It's all happening in murky waters, but at some point, the currents are going to make that stream clear. We'll see what's at the bottom somehow. But just my tinfoil hat is I'm tossing on a layer too.
Yeah,
And
of course. Well, let's switch to this next story, which is a little bit, shall I say, it's a lot more in the weeds, but it's on
no, yeah,
the scaling solution stuff. So Justin Bonds is a friend of mine and a friend of another friend of mine, and very, very smart, very deep researcher, very principled guy. I don't agree with 100% of stuff he says, but usually compared to everyone else, he seems to have like the best insights. But so he says, he made this big tweet thread today. He does a million tweet threads. A lot of times it's like talking smack about Bitcoin, which, you know, fair criticisms, but sometimes he goes a little hard, a little too often. But this one's interesting. He says, L2 scaling solutions have become the greatest corrupting force in this industry, with billions of dollars of value being created that are entirely dependent upon not scaling L1. The lack of incentives for L1 development in Ethereum and Bitcoin has perverted their original vision. And yeah, I mean, he basically goes up and he just says, I still have hope that ETH can pivot back to its original roadmap of execution sharding, which just means sharding on the main chain. Basically means scaling the main chain. He says, however, that would cause billions worth of L2 tokens and VC investments to be wiped out. It's so he does kind of go down about like a lot of this could be fixed by taking a part of the block reward and dedicating it to a treasury. And he mentions Dash, Decred, and Tezos as projects to kind of do some of that stuff. But basically, he just says it's going to like, yeah, he's very bearish on, or basically just pointing out that there's a huge corrupting influence by all the money is in L2. So the main chain gets sort of neglected because there isn't the money in that. And I mean, I know it's a little in the weeds for this whole thing, but what's your take on that whole thing?
Well, I think he's really good at writing stuff to get the clicks.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm probably going to have to steal some of his tactic if I want to boost engagement.
Exclamation
But
points, bold statements, and threads. Because when you
yeah,
start a thread, you're like, this is a thread 1 through 9. You're like, people are going to be like, oh, this guy knows what he's talking about. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to construct a thread. But I do the
yeah,
same thing too. I do a lot more threads after watching this guy too because it works.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like I don't know much about. Well, I'm not very technical, and sure, I've read the white paper on this on Bitcoin and a few other cryptos. But I mean, once you start getting into the actual weeds, like it goes overhead. So there's not really
Mm-hmm.
much I can say uh, to that side. The scaling part, I did an article. I wrote an article out just kind of putting my thoughts out there about what's possible, at least from my understanding. And all right, so there's the argument to make bigger blocks, a la Bcash or whatever the case may be, to increase transaction activity. And I think you even posted about, hey, what about a modest, 1 megabyte increase, right? You don't have to completely blow the farm,
Mm-hmm.
just small incremental stuff, which sounds very reasonable. I mean, it's sensible. Why not? And then I've also seen on the other side of the spectrum where it's like, no, make smaller blocks. That way, transactions are getting processed, and you have more fees for the miners, and there's all this teetering that's back and forth. I'm like, well, I don't know which is the way to go. I'm not. I wish I was smart enough to say, but I mean, there's John Caravallo. He's working on
Oh yeah.
Blitkit, and he's been very much a layer one, promoter, and he's like, this is what we need to do to help make layer one more usable, et cetera, et cetera. And again, some of the jargon just goes way over my head
Mm-hmm.
because I'm looking at like I'm a user, I'm
Yeah, of
I'm
course.
not there as a dev, and so what makes sense to me. And I can't remember his last name, but Trevor from the Stacks community, he had an interesting take on this too. It's like, yeah, you can make something, you can scale something as large as you need it to be, but
Mm-hmm.
if there's no demand for it, then what's the point? What was the point? And I was trying to find ways to relate that to at least like to what I do. And the thing I could think about is, all right, well, I've seen some businesses, they stay small, they're producing a service or a product. I'll just go with service because that's what I really know the
Yeah.
most. So a small company delivering service, and they're in high demand. And okay, that demand is there. They can't service everybody. There's a long wait time to get in the queue. And that's great for the small business because hey, now you can have some kind of predictable market, for like a couple of weeks or a month. And it doesn't hurt to say, well, I need to hire a couple more hands in order to help the load. So scaling the business, by increments doesn't sound like a bad idea. But then I've also seen businesses where, there was some demand, they blew themselves up, to like it went from like 5 employees to 50, and then there's not enough work to support that business. And so I'm trying to take this in like, yeah, it's not easy to kind of figure this out. I wish I could comment a lot more, but the layer two part, that's something I've also been starting to get a little skeptical of. The question of like, I like the Lightning Network. I think it's a good concept, but it's not very user friendly. I don't know what the other issues are on like Ethereum because
Mm-hmm.
that's not what I'm versed in. But my worry is that all right, the liquidity problems, the difficulty for setting up nodes, eventually things start to get centralized. The bigger they get, and that's where somebody posted up something about LSPs, and you'd mentioned that to me too, like
Mm-hmm.
the Lightning service providers. And there's the part of me that thinks, all right, well, if there's a market demand and people aren't taking the incentive to open their own nodes, run their own channels, and I mean, for crying out loud, I can't get somebody to download fucking app on their phone.
Yeah, of course.
What makes me think that, what makes, me confident that they're going to open up their own Lightning channel or manage their own Lightning node? And okay, there's a demand for this stuff. Is this good or bad? I don't know. I really, the centralization part worries me, because at that we end up with the same system at some point down the road.
Mm-hmm.
So, all right, we scale the blockchain, we cut people out eventually because they can't afford it, and then we end up in a centralized situation again. All right, well, what if we go the opposite route and do things smaller? Well, then everything gets congested, things get super expensive, and I guess we'll just go back to fiat.
Yeah, of course.
It's I really wish I was at that autistic level for this.
Yeah.
To figure it out, but.
Well, the to be perfectly fair on that, though, most people who are even highly technical in this domain are kind of, the reason I put that thread up there is because it's kind of, I wouldn't say breaking thought, but it's like, it's not like a lot of people who understand all the protocols very well aren't quite at that level of realization yet, or it's important to have that conversation up because a lot of the smartest people aren't even talking about it really. So
right.
When I'm thinking about scaling and stuff, right, about using, let's just say Bitcoin, you want Bitcoin to be censorship resistant for the whole world. That seems pretty good, right? I want the whole world to use something like this, and I want it to be censorship resistant, which includes decentralization and other stuff like that. If you have the nut of like the core protocol be perfect, however, wherever the end user ends up in that's what Bitcoin is to them. So if everyone's using Cash App and Strike, that literally is Bitcoin. And if that's centralized and KYC'd, then for the purposes of those people, then so is all of Bitcoin, right? It's so the censorship level always ends up like right there. So the thing when you do an L2, right? When you do any kind of a second layer, like for example Lightning, I guess the idea is to take a lot of traffic off that like doesn't matter as much, that it's super hard and decentralized kind of. You kind of push that into an inferior model that's not as good, but because otherwise just have that be L1, right? So an inferior model, but it helps. And so, for example, something like Lightning, I think, could be great for taking off a lot of, like, if people are sending on-chain transactions for all their Nosters apps and stuff, like, that would be chaos. Like, no. So it's good for, like, taking that away so people can still use it as money. Or the prevailing theory, I guess, today with Bitcoin at least, is take small payments off. So then the larger transfers you could still do if you really need to. You pay more and do it. But the thing is, whenever you force everything, if you start trying to force everything into L2, then you kind of like lose both, because you can't use that. Like if L1 is perfect and pristine and decentralized, but you can't use it, then it might as well be centralized garbage because you can't use it. But then, or practically can't use it. And if, like, as a purely settlement layer, I don't really think that's useful to anyone. Maybe as like an more expensive transaction layer, maybe. But then the L2 or whatever, that part is wherever all the action happens. That's your experience. So I guess it's an easier example with Ethereum stuff because I'm sure you've used Polygon before. Polygon is considered an L2. I mean, some people argue that it's a side chain and it's different from an L2. Who cares? It's just definitions. But it's literally how people use Ethereum. They don't use Ethereum to use Ethereum these days. Most people go on Polygon or Optimism or Arbitrum or any of the million different things that are basically just like the Polygon experience. And then, so most people are relying on whatever system those things have. In Polygon's case, which is the one that I pay more attention to, it's like run by like a 5 of 8 multisig. So it's like extremely centralized as far as, running the whole thing. And so even though Ethereum is not, it is at the same time.
Yeah.
So the idea.
What do you think of? Oh, go ahead. Keep going. Keep going.
Well, just the idea is L2, like, I wouldn't say I'm not anti L2 by a long shot, but I'm an L2 minimalist for this reason, because you always have like trade-offs when doing an L2 of some kind. Either user experience, like bridging to Lightning is, I mean, if you just had to move your money into a Lightning channel and that was it, that would already be a pain in the ass. But then you have to manage channels and stuff, and that's just like, oh, that's terrible. So you always have like user experience and decentralization / security, whatever, trade-offs of some kind. Otherwise, you would just scrap the main chain, and that's your L2 is your new L1, right? So I try to keep as much of it on L1 as possible, as long as L1 gets to doesn't start to deteriorate because of that. Like, let's just say, everything happened on L1, but then the security guarantees were like nowhere near as good. There's only like 2 nodes that run the whole network, because 2 giant nodes, because that's like all that could do it under this super hyperbolic, like, on-chain scaling scenario. Like, that's not something we want. And that's like the old school, like, Bitcoin maximalist type argument against bigger blocks and stuff, is like, well, too much of that and this will happen. But so we definitely,
that's what is it? The block size trilemma, right? You have decentralization, security, and speed, and you get to pick 2, right?
Yeah.
I guess the question is, when does centralization actually work, and when does because ultimately, like you'd mentioned this, I thought it was a pretty good thought experiment to run. All right, so you get the LSPs, and then at some point, things get really big. There's centralization starts happening. Take any L2 or really big block, right? At some point, in order to handle the bandwidth, things kind of condense to whoever has the resources for that. I mean, is there a case to say that's good? What do you think there's at some point? Because again, this is one of those, well, there's a demand because people don't want to manage liquidity nodes, right? Or liquidity channels, and people don't want to do certain things. And that, to me, it makes me worry a little bit, not just about like the tokens itself, but just like human action and behavior.
Of course, people follow the incentives.
That's the part. Yeah, so that's the part that really kind of bothers me. It's just because there's been this. I've been having this discussion with a couple of friends about like what is sound money and how we can't exactly try to make gold act like a dollar. It's completely its own thing, and you have to carry it. You got to walk around with it. You got to verify. The whole process is long and lengthy. And then with just the paper note, here you go. Handshake, see you later. And it's to me, I'm wondering, it's like, well, maybe that's the thing, is we know what we know, and the fiat structure itself is just, it's been around for ages, right? There's infrastructure, there's networks, there's all this stuff that's been in development for over 100 years, if that, right? Our modern fiat system, maybe the last 50 years with credit cards, etc. And then we have something that's really just about 14 years in existence. We're trying to match our expectations to be that's something that's already way established. So maybe it's trying to, I don't know, it's like we can't fit that hand in that glove. It doesn't really fit. What do you think about that? Like, that concept?
Well, regarding the fiat and the way that system is worked out, kind of thing, someone did comment on one of the random alt socials that I have. Jason Chavanis said, "Yep, the dollar was an L2 scaling solution for gold. We see how that turned out." And it's kind of a good point on that. As far as like incentives are concerned, people do follow incentives, and I think that with the which layer scales debate thing, it all boils down to that. Like, people will embrace centralization if it fixes their problems, but then as soon as centralization screws them over, then they leave. But if they can, one thing I think is kind of interesting. So, like, Satoshi is an absolute genius, and I don't want to I don't take this. Every circle jerker or Bitcoiner says the same thing, but like, seeing all the crypto stuff that has come later and maybe even improved on Bitcoin, it's all the improvements have been so small and incremental compared to just like the elegance of the initial Bitcoin design. And this is why I always have to say that in the context of, I think there were some holes in the initial design. One of the things that made it amazing was that it was like a self-sustained system, because unlike other free open source software, this thing paid itself. And so you had
Yeah.
money going through the miners to secure and process transactions and stuff like that. Of course, it doesn't pay node operators. There's some arguments that non-mining nodes aren't as important anyway, but that's like I'm not even gonna go down that rabbit hole. But at some point, it's like, well, who pays for developers? A lot of times it's like, okay, well, you have a founder like Satoshi who has a hoard of coins because he was there in the beginning. Even, sometimes they have literal pre-mines, some of these coins. Or then they have some weird shady nonsense. But like, the idea is they have that so they have an incentive to work on their project, because if the value goes up, their wealth goes up. Now Satoshi just disappeared. So that doesn't really work out anymore. But then it's just like, well, how do you fund Bitcoin development? And then you have all this, well, donations, blah, blah, blah. As far as I know, there's only 4 full-time Bitcoin core developers today. I think it's got down to all the way to like 4. And I mean, even the tiny, like relatively tiny Dash team is like over 20, if not more than that. Like, there's just almost no money in literally what we're all relying on, kind of. And that should be kind of scary. And it wasn't programmed in. And so what is programmed in is when you build an L2, you can and then with Bitcoin's case, it's been pretty stark, I guess, because the whole Blockstream stuff with the block size wars and stuff. I mean, of course, there's arguments on both sides of that, but the one thing, Blockstream, which invested heavily in all kinds of Lightning stuff, and of course, their own products are all L2 stuff. There was a lot of money. They got a ton of money. In fact, that they were funding Bitcoin core development for a while. And it's just like, well, how do they make money? They don't make money through on-chain scaling. They make money through no on-chain scaling. And so it's like the follow the money trail. And so we go with Ethereum. It's like, well, Ethereum has an ICO, so they have like a war chest. They got like, the foundation. They got plenty of money to build this stuff out. I mean, and that worked out for a while. But then now we're seeing, through that Twitter thread, right, Justin Bonds is talking about, now it's like Arbitrum, tons of money, Polygon, tons of money, all this stuff. And so now the roadmap for Ethereum was, wow, we need to scale, like we need L2s to like help us until we scale massively. Proof of stake is the first part of that. And with Ethereum, I've noticed the same thing, the same like bait and switch rug pull type stuff, where like SegWit was pitched as a scaling solution when it was just like to help L2s. And then EIP 1559, which is what made Ethereum have infinite inflation but burn the fees like instead of spend them, to have like that mint and burn mechanism. That was pitched as this will make the fees lower, and it just didn't. And then they said, yeah, I was never supposed to make the fees lower. I'm like, what? And then they're like, okay, well, proof of stake, if things will scale so much better with proof of stake. Proof of stake comes. Does it scale better? No. And then they're like, well, sharding. And where each node has to, like, you have like 10,000 nodes. It's not 10,000 nodes run the whole same network. It's like 10 different shards, like 1,000 nodes run just this part, this part, and then they all like converge at the same time to make, you should have like 10x scaling that way. And they didn't say anything. They quietly removed that from the Ethereum scaling roadmap. And it's all about L2s now. I'm like, how does that happen again? Oh, it's the money.
Well, let's be honest, right? It takes money to, or it takes capital to keep this stuff going. If we're competing with the fiat system, who's already got 5 decades leg up, I mean, it's kind of tough on that side. You're making a global network. It works to a certain degree until it doesn't.
Yeah.
And then there's that part. I kind of liken this to, there's the short filmmakers. They do everything on their own, on either their iPhone and their laptop. And then you have the larger studios who produce content, the armies of people, and they win awards and they get their stuff out there. There's nobody funding short film production.
Yeah.
And so all of that is a labor of love. And it might be really nice and genuine, but it's not going to go anywhere. Gesundheit.
Thank you.
Um, but it's difficult. I mean, really, because if you're looking at, I mean, again, my small brain and the last two brain cells I have in that just thinks you're planning something out which is going to take at least 100 years to really, find some kind of solidity. I don't know what the fuck that looks like,
Yeah, no one does,
next
to be
year.
honest.
I mean, yeah, and I can't pretend to say that I do. It's I don't know that part, and only thing I can do is observe and see what's working for me,
Yeah.
and kind of make general observations of what's working for other people. And so that's the thing. Uh, when it comes to like the cash apps and the strikes, it's like it's making people's lives easier because okay, they don't like filing taxes. Um, I get that. I'm not no no I'm not going to blame them. Managing liquidity channels is kind of a full time job,
Yeah.
and yeah, I'm it's that's the case, right? And the other part is even the concept of, again, I'm looking at the people that I interact with anyways. I don't know where it is everywhere else, but trying to teach and onboard those who are interested, but seeing that the what I thought was a 101 course, now I have to make it a double zero,
Mm-hmm.
just absolute beginner. And there are more people like that than there are, individuals who are interested in doing this. I mean, I guess the case in point is like, all right, we just saw a few large scale banks collapse. Not only that, but even the larger ones across the pond, Deutsche Bank, Credit Suisse, and yet people still continue to go back to the well of the fiat banking world, despite all the things that they've seen. I don't know what to do about that. I don't know what to do when a layer two starts getting massively. It goes into that centralization zone. I don't know what to do about that other than not use it
Yeah.
and go somewhere else. Like
I
and
guess that's the answer, right?
that, but that's just me. Yeah,
That the answer is just use what is it? Bruce Lee, like the absorb what is useful, discard what isn't. Just
yeah,
like live on, like the answer is live on crypto, right? And then just when it's not like, well, live on this set of tools that I recommend today. It's like, well, and then what about 5 years from now when things are completely different? Am I still going to be like, no, I said this works and I'm sticking by it? It's like,
yeah.
well, maybe just use what works then. And the whole thing kind of like, evolves over time. Uh, like it does make it is a little full-time jobby for me to keep up on this kind of stuff, obviously. The one
Yeah.
thing that when we talk about like managing liquidity channel, all this other kind of stuff, we're talking about threads, like over the head threads, which there's a lot of over the head stuff for me too. I try to understand to my best, and all that does is gives me like a peak, like a head start into when I have to jump ship to start using something different, because I'm like start looking at
Right.
these things. And so like I put everything into Bitcoin as far as like that's all I used for the most part. And then I had difficulties and I had to switch, and I still, keep a toe into the Bitcoin world or whatever. But I never went all in on Ethereum, because I also started seeing those like and to be fair, I can't remember his last name, some uh, Eastern Bloc fellow, Nikita, who runs Blockchair, the Block Explorer, my favorite Block Explorer, by the way. He
Mm,
started calling out Ethereum small blockerism, I guess, like years ago. And that caused me to pay attention because he was
mm,
mostly like an ETH guy. But he started saying
right.
look, they're saying all these other like pie in the sky sharding, all this kind of stuff. You can also raise the gas limit, which is the ETH block size. You can also raise the gas limit now. But people didn't want to, because then not everyone will be able to run a node. And it's like, well, who runs Ethereum nodes anyway? And part of the thing about proof of stake is you pay people to run
Right. Right.
nodes. So they should be able to run nodes. And I stayed away. I mean, again, I just like the toe. Like I use it when I need to, but I
Yeah.
didn't get in because you see these same signs of like, oh, something else is gonna happen. And so I tweet responded to the the Justin Bonds thread about basically something that wants to scale on chain and has a DAO or some kind of a mechanism for the people in the project to determine its direction. Whereas, with like Ethereum, there's some foundation and shit. Like I don't even know who decides. Like, what if all Ethereum users want on chain sharding, like execution sharding?
Right.
Like, how do they get that? It could be 90% want it, but then there's like 10% plus like whoever the devs are and whatever backroom deals they're making, and same thing with like the Bitcoin core team. Obviously, it's like, how do we figure out where we're going? Like, who decided that like a modest block size increase wouldn't help right now with Bitcoin? Like, who decided that's just never going to happen? And that's just kind of the best I can do, is sort of like try to learn.
Yeah.
What are the signs to look for on if something's going to work out long term or not?
Yeah. I mean, you were there during the block size wars, right? Like, you're
Yep.
trying to live on this stuff, and having transaction takes like a few hours to a few days. And there's a part of me that I'm like, I never got to experience that part. Maybe we're going into that now. I don't know what your impressions are of that, but I'm
Well,
just very curious.
this is a great segue into the next story, because yes, we are coming on a new block size war thing. So, James Dunlop, who's famously a small blocker, debated Roger Ver, was like on all that side, on the winning side as far as BTC is concerned, at least. He quote tweeted this is back at the end of March, one of these these unhinged maxi people who just says, "I'll never attend a conference that promotes shit coins because of like Ordinal Alley, like all this. There's like some NFT on chain for Bitcoin kind of thing. It's like shit coins." And then James said, if anyone wishes to call me a shitcoiner to my face, you can find me at Bitcoin 2023 in Miami. Just remember, attending Bitcoin 2023 makes you a shitcoiner too. He's like making fun of like all that. And then this happened today. Haha, this unironically pinned to the top of the Bitcoin subreddit right now, which is boycott Bitcoin Magazine and their shitcoin conference. And under this whole thing, Bitcoin Magazine give this big long response to this. It says, basically, as a reminder, ordinals are valid Bitcoin transactions compatible with Bitcoin's consensus protocol, blah, blah, blah. It's not a shitcoin or a token at all. And they censored that post from our Bitcoin. And this was back in the day, way back in the day, in the 2015 era kind of thing. Big block, like wrong things started to get censored. And that was a big part of that thing. And still to this day, but now it's not even like herder Bcasher versus, righteous laser eyes. Now it's like it's maxi on maxi violence, right? And so it's the next.
Hey, I'm for it.
The next thing. It's the next level. So it's as a this is like, it's like the meme of like first time. It's like, this is your first Bitcoin holy war. So what's your impression from your first Bitcoin holy war?
I feel like it's just getting started, right? Yeah. And like I like the idea of ordinals. I've been minting my portfolio of work onto the blockchain because for me, most of my work is digital now.
Mm-hmm.
And okay, we're hosting it on some website, but what if that server goes down? Oh, we're hosting on another web platform. What if that goes down? Or we're hosting it on a social media site. Oh, well, we give our rights away. Mm-hmm. So where in the world can a digital artist actually store something that they've done, and hopefully it doesn't just disappear because a service provider goes away, mm-hmm. or their computer completely craps out, And I like the concept of ordinals, and I've been exploring that. I guess it's just maybe things are that good in life that we have these. I don't know. I feel like it's
useless.
It's entertaining, but at the same, yeah, it really is. I mean, people are using Bitcoin to inscribe stuff, and they're paying in Bitcoin to keep things going. I know the miners right now are happy because, like, hey, I'm not mining an empty block. It's securing the network for the most part, mm-hmm. and I mean, these should be good things. And I'm also on the side of like I I think people should earn, save, and spend in Bitcoin
Mm-hmm.
if that's what they're going to do, or crypto, or whatever. In this case, let's specifically Bitcoin because the entire concept of hodling, hasn't really done much other than number go up or the speculation on that side.
Mm-hmm.
And even in the sheer face of banking collapse, people still, oh, I'm DCAing and I'm going to wait for someday, one day. It's like it's great, okay. All these theories and etc. are maybe but it's a 50-50 chance that all this stuff actually happens. I don't
Yeah.
know, right? And over what time frame? Nothing's absolutely guaranteed. And the only thing I do know is that I can use this in a very non censorship resistant way, something that's non confiscatable. Like all that
Mm-hmm.
part is true, and it's start using it. I got into it, at a meetup a couple weeks ago with someone who's like, "Oh no, I'm never spending my corn." I'm like, dude, if you're not spending it, you're not using those blocks. Someone's
Yeah.
going to start using the blocks. Someone's going to fill it up. There's going to find a use case, and if it's not you, then who?
It's gonna
And
be
he's like, well, these
JPEGs.
damn Ordinals, like, bro, look at it. Look at it for what it is. All right, you have this selfish, self-righteous indignation about something you're not even using.
Mm-hmm.
It's and so I just find it odd. It's like you want people using Bitcoin. That's the point. It's something to be celebrated to that extent. But then I can also see the other side of it. It's like, well, I don't want somebody defacing my tokens. I don't want somebody defacing my coin and putting inscriptions on it. All right, well, is this really an issue? I don't,
Yeah,
I
it's
don't know.
the Maxi thing has been kind of funny because uh, it's entirely, and this is something you don't need to be technical to understand because this is entirely a human problem. And at some point, so Bitcoin's the big tent. All of crypto was under Bitcoin. Some people had side projects, and
Mhm.
they played around in alts, but it was literally just like a play around type thing. And it like
Yep.
no one was a non Bitcoin crypto person until ETH came around, but that was already like well into the block size wars and stuff. And so every obviously as Bitcoin solidifies, as the tent grows and Bitcoin solidifies what it's going to be, a lot of people leave to other projects because they wanted to do those things, and when the tent doesn't encompass that, that's natural. At some point, with the split, it was like a vision split where it's like everyone should run their own node. You should hodl. You don't really need to spend yet. We'll figure all that for L2s versus spend, spend, spend every day, buy, spend, big blocks or die. No one gives a crap if you can run your own node. Some data center will do. You'll be fine. Like those are the two straw
Yeah.
mans of those two sides. Part of it split off, and I would argue that the big blocker side is probably more people, but the hardcore big blocker side was smaller and just like went off, and then the rest of them stayed with the bigger. Did they stayed rather than leave, even though they kind of would have rather had big blocks, but whatever. So what's happening with Bitcoin up till today happened with Bitcoin's forks on a much faster time scale. Because first you have like all the competing visions of what Bitcoin could be, and then you got on-chain scaling maximalists split off into Bitcoin Cash, and then that idea got further distilled down because you got just this big small tent, this big block, big tent, and then Craig Wright and his lunatic people like started causing havoc, and then they got split off, and that camp, the BSV camp, is either Craig Wright cultists or just people who want to build on something that massively scales, like app builders and stuff like that. And they're still
Yeah.
there for some reason. I think they're kind of floating away bit by bit. But so those people forked off, and it's like, well, they were just digital cash people. And then Amari, the guy who basically created Bitcoin Cash to begin with, was like, well, there's no money in this. We need a developer fund. We need to do this Avalanche pre-consensus thing, to like all this other stuff that like people mostly were concerned of, like his team getting a portion of Block Reward Forever, being the official funded team on a protocol level. And so when he tried to do that, they're like, screw off to eCash. So that's what he did. And so now Bitcoin
Right.
Cash that's left is just the distilled idea of just like, we want to scale on chain, but you don't want to do it ridiculously sillily like the BSV people. We want to use it as payments, but we want to also evolve the protocol to have like smart contract capability and other stuff like that. But like mostly, you know, that kind of distilled idea is finally still there. And so a lot of these crazies, like no, like I'm not calling the eCash people crazies, but the BSV crazies, Bitcoin only, the one
Right.
true Bitcoin people, which there's still that sentiment, as I'm sure you've seen in the Bitcoin Cash world, but it's a sentiment. It isn't this hardcore cult mentality. That mentality was necessary to provide the aggression to split off from BTC, just as the current, you know, keep your JPEGs off my chain mentality is what that side needed. Those are their holy warriors that they needed to resist against the big block ideas. And so now those things, now that we just kind of decided, okay, Bitcoin is supposed to be maximally decentralized, supposedly, and people should be able to run their own node. Now that that's kind of the path forward, and that we can scale on L2 like Lightning. Now that that's the path forward, we don't need the crazy guys anymore because they're just going to take it to extremes. They're going to say no JPEGs on chain. They're going to say don't spend it, DCA forever. Everything's a shitcoin, including Bitcoin itself somehow. I don't know that weird logic. Those people
Yep.
are, in my opinion, going to not last. And the reasonable people who are left in Bitcoin are going to be left, I think. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe the crazies are going to win, and then it's time to just like burn the project to the ground and start with something else. But I think that the reasonable people are going to win, and I think at that point, reasonable ideas like an increased block size become more palatable. Not necessarily giant gigamegs, terablocks like the BSVers, but like, you know, having double the block size maybe. And
Maybe.
keeping with Moore's law, everyone can still run their node, but it all works out better for people and the miners keep getting paid. That kind of an idea, I think, is a reasonable idea, and I think that that will never fly with the current holy war mentality. But those holy warriors, I think, are starting to piss off everyone, like literally everyone who's left. And eventually,
Yeah.
they're going to overstay their welcome and they're going to go away.
Possibly. I mean, to that degree, it's very human, right? It's
Yes.
nothing to really do with the technology itself, and it makes kind of makes individuals question, well, what is Bitcoin, right? Is it the idea of being peer to peer and the idea of being able to transact, or is it because small block, or it's big block, or it's the biggest block, or whatever the case may be? Or is it just that idea of like, hey, I can transact with you securely, privately, directly? And like I've been looking at all the other chains and what they have to offer and seeing what it's about. It's like, all right, there's good things that each project has something good to take from, and you can definitely learn from it. And I think, all right, if this is, and yeah, you can get into the tribalism, and I hope you're right that at some point all of it just kind of, breaks away, and this, hey, I'm this camp, and nobody wants to hear him anymore. That's, you're too annoying, and sensibility comes back. I do hope that happens because I mean, you do need to have, I think, as far as the space goes, more rational thinking, and calmer heads instead of my project good, your project bad. It's that's getting old very fast.
Yeah, I agree. I guess we'll see because at one point the mining pools during the hash war were signaling which Bitcoin version they supported, and they were basically by signaling support for I can't remember if it was Bitcoin XT at the time or Bitcoin Unlimited, is one of those different things, but basically it was saying we want bigger blocks. And it was around 50-50 for a while. And then something called the New York Agreement happened, which I'm sure you've heard about in the lore,
Yeah.
which basically was just a whole bunch of business owners who like ran big businesses, mostly like the digital currency group, Coinbase, Gemini, all those kinds of people got together and just said like, look, this war is bad for business. We're going to end the war by giving both sides what they want. We're going to activate SegWit and double the block size. Give both sides like a compromise. And the funny thing about that was, for whatever else shady backroom deal, trying to like get a new development team for Bitcoin, like all that, whatever, all that stuff aside, miner hash rate signaling went up to well over 90% overnight in favor of SegWit 2x. So the actual infrastructure behind Bitcoin was extremely in favor of this. But then it was so, a bunch of people made a lot of noise that they just backed off after the SegWit, and they just didn't do the block size increase.
Right.
So what it remains to be seen is there's like a pivotal moment. Like that was the pivotal moment when the block size war was decided, right? When it's like, all right, well, big block.
Yeah, because you actually have to get more. It's not just miners. It's like you have to get the miners, the exchanges, the wallets, the nodes, and the developers. I mean, that's like at least 5 different points to agree on something.
Yeah.
So it's not that's a lot of debate. I mean, it's good that everybody, I guess, there's fighting about it. You have to let the best ideas compete, so to speak. But hopefully there's enough hubris, or humility, not hubris, to kind of be like, hey, maybe we, just work it out. I know. I feel like I'm always because I'm not in it. I'm just kind of like an outsider looking in. And,
well, you're more of an insider than anyone because you use this stuff for your daily life in ways that a lot of those people don't, and so that's like what would you call like expert testimony, like
right.
The what are the effects of this? But so what I'd like to see is what happens like the Bitcoin conference, right? It's a big Bitcoin conference. It's the big one. They've always had it. There's always been some like toxic maxi element to it where they shitcoin this or whatever. But it still goes on. People go. They charge way too much for tickets. Bitcoin Magazine itself was at the forefront of, and by the way, like I actually worked with Bitcoin Magazine way back in the day a little bit. Like it did some like PR deals with the parent company and stuff, and got some articles placed in there and all that kind of stuff. And then they after that they took a huge maxi turn where they just become super maxi, and then they've been like publishing weird tweets and stuff that are like praising centralized solutions or like something like just doing weird fake newsy things, but like being super maxi. They're holding the conference, and now they're in the crosshairs of the maxis, right? And so, which is funny, but this is the moment. I'm gonna maybe I don't know if I should call it, but I'll take a risk at being wrong. I'm gonna call it, right?
Okay.
Whatever happens with this conference is what happens with Bitcoin this coming one, and I think this is like it's like the last like Nick Carter was like one of their gods, and then you're a shitcoin ICOer, and he's out of the maxi pool, right? And then you got Eric Wall, Udi Wethmeyer, however you say his name. Those were all like maxi type people who just are now out of the fold. And then Jameson Lopp was like the ultimate like maxi prize. He was like the new Andreas Antonopoulos kind of figure, and then he's out now. He's a shitcoiner.
So where did Andreas Antonopoulos go?
I don't know.
I know he left. Yeah, I mean, he was one of my first introductions to Bitcoin because I was looking for more like level-headed individual, and I'm like, well, he explains things very succinctly, and that you can tell that there's passion behind that. But yeah, I would agree that whatever happens at the conference, I mean, I'm going to see what it's all about.
Yeah,
and
it's gonna be interesting.
And you bring up another point too. It's like people who are developers in the projects, or even like those who are doing all this stuff in the space, aren't using the product themselves.
Yeah,
and I find that I wonder if that's in every other token project too, across the board. Like, hey, I'm the big developer at this crypto project, but I'm still using fiat. Just
I mean, that happened. There was a couple of developers for some privacy project that were down that will remain unnamed because I won't talk too much shit. But and one of them was like, didn't want to spend crypto. He's just like, nah, I'm just not into that. And the other one got out of his way to like get a different wallet and swap over some stuff just so he could spend crypto locally where he could. And it's kind of funny to see like the two different, like they're both involved in some pretty amazing stuff, but just like one of them was like, you know, staying by the warrior's path, right? And then the other one just like, just like, this is like, I believe it and it's a day job, but I'm not going to change my life until it becomes more convenient. But as far as like the conference, if it's successful as a Bitcoin conference and all the Bitcoiners still go there and there isn't some weird mass boycott thingy, then I think that'll be over the hump of nonsense from maxis, right? And then it'll start to be like, all right, Bitcoin's going to be okay. If the conference gets derailed somehow and it's just like a few people and who are all ridiculed and all this kind of stuff, like if it doesn't work out super well, you'll be able to see based on that which way the wind's going. And I think that just like with the SegWit 2x like vote, like how that went, where it seemed like there was a ton of support to just move on, but then there was enough people that were, including a lot of like Blockstream people, right, and core developers and angry people with their own nodes and all this, and their angry hats and stuff, that made enough stuff that they steered the ship this way. And if it doesn't work this time, then that's over. But we should pivot to the Trezor one, right? Because this is kind of interesting. This is another very in the weeds kind of thing, so to speak. But so Trezor, hardware wallet CoinJoins coming April 19th, 2023. So Trezor's actual I guess software is integrated with basically Wasabi wallet, which is one of the two more popular, I think it is the most popular CoinJoin protocol in Bitcoin. And so that's on the surface, I think it's a massive improvement, because now you're having like where people rest their coins. Now you're adding privacy to that layer, and I think it's pretty cool. Before we get into the other details of this, what do you think of that?
So I mean, it does sound cool, but I remember, what was it, last year, the year before, where Wasabi, something with compliance or whatever that case may be, and everybody was just like, "Yep, we're not using Wasabi anymore. We're making the shift to another, privacy wallet." So Sparrow Wallet was the wallet of choice.
Yeah.
And then even like now, or was it towards the end of last year, maybe early this year, Wasabi Wallet, they were trying to show that, hey, you can mix your coin at any level, and someone pointed out that there's wallet reuse, and that wasn't a very good thing. Reuse. Yeah, address reuse, and I'm like, wow, that's rather complex. I don't know how the actual coin joining works to that degree, and what would cause an address to be reused in that case. But it didn't sound good. So on this one, I don't know, maybe it fixed it. Maybe something got solved, but it is good to get people mixing their coins and bringing some privacy in. The politics behind it all, I have no clue.
So the thing with the politics, some more in the weed stuff. But so yes, on the surface, great. I know a decent amount about CoinJoin, but I don't know enough in the weeds to know for sure. Well, one thing that apparently became clear to me, and so in defense, like as you can see, Max Hilbrand is commenting on that thing. He works with Wasabi Wallet, or he did at least at some point, and he's been on my show before, and I'm a big fan of him. He's a very reasonable,
very level-headed.
Yeah, and supposedly lives out unbanked off of Bitcoin, which is always a plus, right? And so, on the other hand, I've had the guy from Ronin Dojo Node and Samurai Wallet on as well. So I kind of have exposure to both camps. And let me tell you, this is there's been some gnarly feud going on between these two. The two big CoinJoin implementations in Bitcoin, the two teams, have not gotten along over the years, many years. They've been fighting. They've been calling each other scammers. They've been, well, I mean, I'm not putting words in their mouth, but there's a lot of bad blood between these teams, and I have no idea why. Do you have any insight on that, or?
No, I don't know any of them. I just see that, okay, there's a product. It was working until it didn't, and it caused people to feel like really upset, and confidence was lost. And that part, that part kind of stands out to me. It's, well, I mean, you're messing with people's money for the most part, and people are very sensitive about what's going to work. So if all of a sudden, Wasabi is doing something that's not promising, that's not fulfilling on the promise, by having an address reuse, which again, maybe they fixed it, maybe they didn't, I don't know. But Samurai Wallet too, that's another one I've met. I've met so many interesting people. I've met my first Dogecoin maxi not that long ago. I've met some Samurai Wallet maxis. Like, I didn't know wallets could have maxis as well. It's just
imagine some random person who's just trying to learn about crypto, and it's like, oh, I know this Live on Crypto guy. He's doing a show. Let me listen in. And now he comes right into like the wallet and Dogecoin maxi part of it, and he just like that head just explodes.
Yeah, so I mean the feuding, okay, I get it. Hey, my product is better, or use my stuff. That guy sucks. All right, sure, there could be a little bit of that going on and trying to fight for market space, but that's about all surface level stuff that I've got. I don't know Max. I don't know any of the guys at Samurai. I'm a dude in Florida, living on Bitcoin. That's
So the funny thing about this whole thing, right, is I mentioned the feud only because I think it's relevant, because my knowledge of the situation comes from like the Samurai Wallet angle mostly. Like that's where most of it. So I gotta admit that I'm not an expert, and most of my information comes from the angle of one of these two parties that hate each other. So that's like the full disclaimer kind of thing. What I do know is, as far as I know, according to people like Seth for Privacy and people like that, Samurai and the Samurai Whirlpool and Sparrow Wallet, which uses all that stuff, is considered the gold standard of Bitcoin privacy. And Wasabi is the more used one, but there's a few things that are very concerning about that. The most recent one is that supposedly they work with Chainalysis, and they don't allow transactions that have been, I guess, flagged by like government entities or whatever to be used in this thing. Basically, they're trying to make sure that stuff that is explicitly used for illegal activity can't use this. And I mean, obviously, I don't think they should be able to do that at all. I don't think that's a big red flag, but that's not the first red flag. There's this other tweet I put out says, that's of course from Samurai Wallet again. Consider the source. The 25. They're just about this transaction, basically saying that there was this address reuse thing. And the way CoinJoin works, right, is you jumble a bunch of coins together. They come to new addresses. So, and the death is correlating these addresses with other things. So like if you CoinJoin a whole bunch, but send it to the same address for the same payment that then you later send from a different wallet, now you just said it's the same person. And it's just, you screw the whole thing up. That's why they have the doxic change thing, where whatever change you get back, it's just like, imagine you had to like hide, like you do a cash transaction, it's $19.95, you pay $20, you get a nickel back, and you have to like hide that somewhere, because if you use that nickel with the next payment, then it says, oh, those two are the same person. So you can't do that. Now, what happened in this case that they showed was there was address reuse from some of this toxic change got used with this mixed private stuff. So the private and then the can't touch it because it'll dox you stuff got mixed. And the important thing here is User didn't do this address reuse. The client did. Meaning it's a bug or something in the Wasabi code, I guess, according to, again, this very biased source. But the other thing I know is two of the most high profile hacks used Wasabi wallet and were traced and are now in prison because of that, including the Bitfinex hacker. Remember the cringy TikTok people? They used Wasabi wallet, and that's I can't remember if this specific thing was from that case, but there was the samurai people were tweeting about that specific case had some address reuse that was done by the mixing protocol and not by user error. That's what busted them. That's what got them literally in prison. And so when there's multiple people that go to prison because they use this thing, and I don't have all the information. I'd love to go back and forth with everyone over this and find out the truth, but just from like my user perspective, as like not a technical person, just as a user, and probably you too, I'd stay the hell away from Wasabi until we figure out what's going on.
Yeah, that was when I first heard that they were working with Chainalysis, which was what I think. Yeah, it was the Bitcoin conference last year. It was last year. Holy shit! Wow. All right, time's flying. But I remember people were booing them for it, and I just remember too the red flag is like, hey, if this is an accident, that's too big of a risk. You know, and I can't afford to have a one-off. Sorry. So, and that's the thing about all of this is that we only really get one shot. You know, if a wallet's coming out and it doesn't do what it says it's supposed to do, people aren't going to use it. I mean,
yeah, prison.
Yeah, well, prison is that, but
prison.
Also
like, don't go to prison. Like that's the big thing, right? People don't want to go to prison.
Well, I mean, so if a wallet is supposed to be quote unquote secure, yet somehow, some way, someone's able to tamper with it and funds get lost, or I mean, people are so sensitive about their money, and rightfully so. So if this is a thing that Wasabi's doing, it may be on purpose. It may be a feature, not a bug. Who knows? But yeah, I'm staying away from it. That's for damn sure. It's too much of a liability, and the whole point of Bitcoin and the giant crypto world is don't trust, verify.
Yes.
And trying to use a wallet like that, I mean, you're putting a bit of trust in it, and you're trusting that they're not gonna
do what they're gonna do.
Yeah, so I mean, like, running your own node is important, to verify yourself, to verify the coins that comes through privately, and there's just so much to this. It's a little disappointing to a certain degree that this stuff happens. I mean, it doesn't make the onboarding process any easier.
Of course. There's also something that makes me think of, first off, appreciate people like Naomi Brockwell, like Seth for Privacy, who do their research and kind of like, so idiots like us don't have to. No offense, me. I'm talking about, but
oh no, I'm up there.
But also, like, Trezor is the original hardware wallet. Like, as far as I know, they're the original manufacturer, and they, in my opinion, from all this discussion, it seems like they're using a inferior and potentially dangerous approach to privacy, giving users a false sense of security, maybe making a honeypot. And I'm not saying this to like say that Trezors are scammers, the Trezor people are scammers, or like feds or anything like that. I just think it's at the point where politics and profit kind of got ahead of the main mission, and like almost everyone who just uses Trezor now, who uses Bitcoin, almost everyone's just gonna be like, yeah, this is great, I'm gonna mix. And is one of those we're still so early moments, because I mean, at what point in the future, like, are we going to be still dealing with this stuff? And the other thing that's kind of there's some salt on, is Trezor got paid something like $100,000 or something, I can't remember, a grant from the Zcash Foundation or one of the grant programs. I don't remember exactly which one, but they got paid by Zcash to integrate shielded addresses, i.e., actually using Zcash's privacy, and they
Right.
just haven't done it, and they put it on the back burner. They just literally took the money. I don't say they took the money and ran, because when you put it off, but they put it off so they could do this CoinJoin thing. And
Right.
so when you, literally in, I'm sure you get like David Burkett of who made the Mimblewimble implementation on Lightning on Litecoin,
Yep.
and who's more of a Litecoin guy, right? And then also Seth for Privacy, who's much more of a Monero guy, but also a very strong Bitcoin guy. None of them are Zcash guys. Both basically say that Zcash's modern privacy is the top of the line out there. So if you consider the article, obviously Zcash people are going to say that, right? But
Yeah.
when you're pushing that to the side, be like, we're going to do this, not even Whirlpool, CoinJoin with Samurai and stuff. We're just doing this thing. Oh, it breaks my heart a little bit. It's just like, you should be putting the user first. You should be making the best product you could in the world. And then we're still at this stage when it's just like, well, this is like the popular one, or they threw us a big bag of money, or, well, because they use Chainalysis, we're probably going to come under less scrutiny from regulators who are like, well, look, we're making sure that that only real people are getting privacy on their Trezor.
Hmm.
It's not criminals, not criminals. It's just regular people, because we use the more compliant, and it breaks my heart a little bit.
Yeah. It kind of goes again. This is all about trust, right?
Yeah.
We're putting a lot of people are putting a lot of faith in these companies and service providers, and when it gets abused or maybe disrespected, it is heartbreaking. I've had a couple of friends though, and we've been talking about the whole
Mm-hmm.
concept of open source and what is this, and the idea of hardware wallets, and the always question comes up like, well, number one, did you install the software? Did you put together the parts? Like, how secure is this stuff? And yeah, the treasurers and the ledgers and the cold cards and whatever the other keep, I think, is another one, but
Keep key. Yeah, I have one of those.
yeah, keep. Yeah. So I mean, they all serve a purpose and they're trying to service a market, but then at the end of the day, it just comes down to you're trusting that entity, right? So like I think Ledger is very very closed source. It's not open source at all,
Mm-hmm.
and all of the figures that pop up on Ledger's screen is because they're running it on their node and they're pulling from some exchange number. So unless you've made your own sort of hardware device, which like for me, I've kind of gone in this route, which is just I have an old laptop, it's
Mm-hmm.
running Core. That's the hardware wallet for me because it's not connected to the internet. It's just this weird like process, but at least I know like I put it together and I'm not getting some spyware. And I don't like Ubuntu anymore because of this, because it makes my life really frustrating. But
Mm-hmm.
nevertheless, it'll grow on me. But it's just that case of I don't trust anybody with my funds.
Yeah.
You know,
I mean, it's it's definitely at the we're still so early stage, because I think a hardware wallet is honestly the best way of getting a relatively, especially like a new person up to like me
yeah,
right now, you know,
yeah,
like up to just not a super nerd, right? To be able to like have some security for their funds, because the only thing you got to do to get security on that is unplug it, and then you're like,
right,
all right, I basically can't touch it. Kind of, it's kind of idiot proof to have a good level of security, and and to be able to access it, and then not like copy paste your seed phrase in and have all the keyloggers ruin your life, and like it's about the best you could do. But like in the future, I think we'll have something a lot better than that. But why don't we skip over the AI thing, because hey, everyone's talking about AI. It's kind of old hat, and just hit on the thing that you sent me about the IRS, our friends. Which, when you talk about, it's
oh
still
yeah,
so early. but it's also still so late. So, starting next year, a new IRS rule will require anyone earning over $600 on payment apps like Venmo in 2023 to receive a 1099-K form. The old threshold was earning $20,000 over 200 transactions. Okay. Well, give me your thoughts on this one.
So I remember this one. This was popping up in like late 2021, and then last year was also kind of the warning flags of, hey, it's coming, it's coming. This is what's going to happen. There's a part of me that's like, you know what, $600 for for a 1099 form, good, right? It's almost like they're shooting themselves in the foot. All the bureaucracy, all the paperwork, all the filing, all the tracking, it's just going to cause so much burden on the bureau. I mean, by all means, let's do it. Go for it. Then on the other side of it, it's like, man, that's going to ruin so many people because I don't know many people who use cash these days. And you have things like Facebook Marketplace or Meta Marketplace, however you want to call it now, who are selling their wares, just trying to get rid of stuff. And they might blow up over, 601 in transactions. And now all of a sudden they're on the hook. And they have to prove that they spent more than they earned in order to get the write-off. But I mean, it's just a burden. It's a hassle, and it shouldn't have to be there. And then there's the other part, which is like, literally, the difference for you is just a 2 millimeter move away. You're on the App Store, press 2 buttons, get yourself a Bitcoin or crypto wallet, and start transacting with that instead. Like it's 2 millimeters, 2 clicks. Why is this so hard to do? And again, this just kind of reinforces what I've just been seeing is that, I don't know, people are just so lazy. But I want to get your take on this. What do you see from this ruling? How do you feel like it's going to fare out?
Yeah, just like there's that make or break, that like collision coming between all of Bitcoin and maxis, and a couple years further down the road, there's going to be a collision with Ethereum users and its like L1 minimalists and all the weird shit they're going to start pulling to like make excuses to not shard, for example. We're having this thing with like and this is like a more on geopolitics in general, right? The American empire is bloated and it's about to start cracking, right? It's already started with the whole like BRICS thing, the whole like petrodollar kind of it's all starting to shake away. And the U.S. tax code is like, America is the land of the free and the home of the brave, all that awesome stuff. But, not exactly as advertised these days in a lot of ways. And a lot of the stuff is the tax code. A lot of stuff is the money, the fiat currency that's the best of the fiats, but maybe not for long. Maybe it's starting to crack. Like, we're at this turning point, and right now it's still on how can we squeeze more money out of the everyman, out of the mom and pop, out of Joe Sixpack. We're still at that stage of things, and so there's something that's going to give. And unfortunately, so I just interviewed, and this will be maybe in a week and a half. I'll put it out. In a fellow who goes by Dr. Bitcoin, who's just an old school Bitcoiner from like 2010, 2011, that kind of days.
Oh, wow.
And he just got out of prison. And I contacted him when he was going to prison or in prison to arrange the interview because he P2P sold some Bitcoin. And it's a very sobering thing about how we're definitely at the then they fight you stage. And on like a side note on this fellow, I do kind of like his his Twitter bio right now. Let me pull it up. He just says like ops at Free Ross DAO, dev pod leader at Ukraine DAO, advisor, blah blah blah, and he says was in prison for BTCing too hard, and it's just like, yeah. So we're at this stage where it's getting dicey out there, and I kind of was like harping on the like we got to live on crypto thing, and I'm kind of on the next stage now for that, where I think we should live on crypto. I absolutely think we can and should, but I think that we need to start privately living on crypto, and which is a very small distinction. Some of us were already doing that, but like for example, I kind of believe everyone should avoid KYC services if they can. I think that everyone, I mean, obviously the whole hold your own keys, all that stuff, but I think that everyone should try, maybe not everyone, but as many people as possible, try to run a full node, figure out how to do it, and I'll figure out for you and show you, right? How to do it over Tor, so your IP address isn't like logging all your transactions and stuff. How to mix if you're using Bitcoin, how to use like shielded Zcash or use Monero or whatever else. Other than that, how to like buy stuff privately, and how to basically push people in the direction of look up all Naomi's videos on how to de-Google your phone, how to disassociate your phone number from like your main phone number from what you don't give out your email. Use use 2FA with like a security key. Use password manager. Like de-Google everything, encrypt everything. Like all that kind of stuff that role play that LARPing a cypherpunk kind of deal. But like for real, because you might need it in the next couple of years, and there's going to be a good 5-year period, I think, when things are going to get quite bumpy for the crypto people. It's going to get bumpy. For the fiat people, it's going to get bumpy. Just get ready to deal with bumps until we get to the other side of this.
Yeah, it's kind of terrifying in a certain way.
Yes, it is.
People, I mean, if you're fiat maxi, you're about to get financially raped day in, day out, right? And at that point, you're going to try to use your coins, you won't know how, or you're trying to get in and you don't even know where to start, and it's going to be tough. And then the other part is like all of us who are out there sort of promoting, like, hey, get on the arc, it's starting to rain, get on. We might end up having to go quiet for a while, and that's a little frustrating. I don't like it that much. I mean, I remember when I started to document my process and journey, because I figure, hey, maybe these messages in a bottle will eventually land on somebody's shore, and they'll read it and be like, hey, this is useful for me. Or even right now, like I've been building onboarding tools, but a lot of this stuff ends up putting targets on your back, and that alone, I mean, like now I've been starting to get very, very private, at least like the last half year of trying to operate in a very discreet way, and it's not easy for the everyday person who's just going to get into it.
Yeah, but it is possible, and I'm taking the plunge too. As I'm sure you can see, you recognize this model right here.
Yep.
Getting ready to do the plunge fully. That's kind of, so that's my, this is kind of where my shill-o'clock, before I get to your shill-o'clock, is, obviously I did like the how to live on crypto. I was then going to do how to run a business on crypto. That's going to be number 3. Number 2 is going to be how to privately live on crypto. And I'm kind of jumping into that as part of this. So in just about a month from now, I'm going to ETH in Amsterdam, the ETH conference there, which is dedicated to privacy, in also to Alexei Pertsev, the Tornado Cash developer, who's still being held without charges since August. So, which is rough. But so I'm going to go to Amsterdam. So living on crypto and de-Googled phones and traveling in a foreign country. That's kind of my goal for like the next 5 or so weeks, right? And if I could do that whole thing, then I can tell other people how to do it, right? And it's not just like I'm hiding out in my little haven of New Hampshire where I always know people who can like spot me if I can't figure out how to pay for something. And as part of this thing, I got to figure out how to do NFC payments, like tap and pay, on a de-Googled phone, which the short answer is you can't. And the long answer is I have a couple of ideas. So we'll see. But so that's the whole project, because if I can do it, Doesn't mean anyone can do it, but it doesn't mean everyone can do it right away, but it does mean that anyone could figure it out if I could figure it out. And I'll hopefully be doing, I'd like to do a video, just like the how to live on crypto, here's the things. I'd like to do a video on like the stages of living on crypto and like how to live on crypto based on if you're just basically a fiat slave and you want to keep being a fiat slave, but you want to do it on crypto. I think that like, where it's like basically use a KYC bill pay service and then you have like a KYC like crypto card that you just like keep loading it, you're fine. And that's just like literally the only thing you do. That's like the most you can get your fiat slave person to do, right? You do that, and then you do the next level, which is like do it but non-custodially the whole way. And then it's just like, oh, and then like non-KYC the whole way, but then also non-KYC and like hacker man with like the hoodie and stuff the whole way. And so just so people have like different levels and they can like, oh, I tried this, I'm going to move to that. So there you go.
Kudos, man. You're a trailblazer.
Yeah. So are you though, because you have more phones than me. So that's just how it works. All right, let's wrap this thing up. What's shill-o'clock? What do you want to shell?
All right. So I definitely want to shill a few things. One is our business workshop that we're having, in the Tampa Bay area, trying to onboard as many businesses as we can because, we started a foundation called the Bitcoin Bay Foundation, and its mission is to help onboard the Tampa Bay area to a Bitcoin standard. And part of that incentive is being able to teach the smaller mom and pop shops, maybe smaller enterprises too, like how to use Bitcoin to transact, whether it's to accept, whether it's to pay their employees. We have a great line of speakers that are coming. So very excited about that one.
Mm-hmm.
You can go to bitcoinbay.live and check that out. Of course, if people want to keep reading Living on Bitcoin and some of those experiences that I've been having, positive and negative, I try to disclose the bad just as much as the good. You can check out livingonbitcoin.substack.com. I think Twitter is kind of shadow banning anything that has to do with Substack. So if anybody wants to check that out, have a peek. And currently working on some tools to help very absolute beginners to get onto Bitcoin. And when I mean beginners, I'm talking about like my mother and my grandmother. If they can get it and understand what it is, then the site's doing its job, and hopefully this is resources you can pass on. And it's funny because I think a few other people are trying to do the same thing. So I feel like everybody's converging of seeing the fiat ship starting to sink a lot faster. And we're like, hey, here's the tools that you need. So
yeah, absolutely.
That should be done soon.
Well, that would be fantastic. And I do have an anecdote from my own mother when I tried to set her up with a hardware wallet. I just said like, all right, well, here you go. You're set up. And then, so these words, so what you're going to do now is see those words. You're going to write down your like magic recovery words. And she says, oh, I already wrote my own down. What? No, I wrote my own down. I'm like, that's not how it works. You don't just come up with words that you think should restore your money and then just like, no, that's not. Listen, mother, write down the words I tell you. Okay, those words, put those down. Just one of those little quirky moments. But so last thing is just Sylvan says, great discussion. Thanks. Thank you very much for listening, Sylvan. You're a great guy. I would say you're a great American, but you're not an American, so there you go. So next week, let me see the calendar as I finish my own shill-o'clock. Next week, Sylvan's actually coming on the podcast. Yay.
Oh, nice.
But next is the Zcash podcast, number 5, starring everyone's favorite privacy advocate, Naomi Brockwell. So it's going to be a privacy deep dive. And I'm sure there's going to be Zcashy stuff, but it'll be Zcash and privacy on the whole. Though the previous month I had Seth for privacy on to talk a little bit more about the crypto privacy and like Zcash versus Monero and versus like CoinJoin stuff, and offer a critical take on Zcash, for example. But this is like, your phone is spying on you is the thing I teased Naomi about. Like that's literally all she talks about. But it's it's true. So your phone is spying on you. Everyone, bring your de-googled Pixel. It's gonna be a good one. Yeah. So thanks everyone for watching. It's been a great, fun show. Happy Friday. Happy weekend. Don't get too drunk. Just a little bit. And yeah, I guess I'll see you guys next week. Thanks, Esteban. Bye bye, guys.
See ya.